Projekt Moderní vinař vzdělávání pro úspěch na současném trhu je spolufinancován z Evropského sociálního fondu a státního rozpočtu České republiky.
So, welcome to the National Wine Centre here in Baltica, Moravia. And what I'd like to do today is to take you through the 7 S's of wine tasting, using 4 of the champion wines from the Czech and Moravian regions of the Czech Republic. I have in my hand Louis Girando. It is a vintage 2009 sparkling wine. And the first S in wine tasting is C. So we're talking about the appearance of this wine, and because it is a sparkling wine, there are a few sort of technical terms that I can show you. For example, when you want to look at the color of a sparkling wine, it's always good to hold it against a white background to get a good idea of the color. And we see here that this is probably a greenish yellow. Also, you can see the bead. It's the line of bubbles rising up from the glass. And one of the great things about really good sparkling wine is that the bubbles tend to be quite small, or as we say, fine. So we would say that this sparkling wine has a fine bead. Okay? The next S in wine tasting is to swell. Now, usually with sparkling wines, we don't swell too much because the carbon dioxide, the gas, is already helping to get as much aroma from the glass as possible. So we usually don't swirl or turn the glass for sparkling wine. Then the 4th step is to sniff. Wonderful. The aroma is lifted citrus, grapefruit and lemon, as well as some biscuity lees flavors. The 4th step is to sip, which means we take a small amount of the wine in our mouths. The 5th step is to slurp, and again, perhaps for sparkling wines, we usually don't slurp our wines. What do I mean by that? Well, often when you take the wine into your mouth, it's a very good idea to suck air into your mouth, which helps to get the most flavor from the wine. And it actually helps the aromas to travel from the back of your mouth up to your nose. So I will demonstrate slurping. It's an ugly sound, but it actually really helps you to appreciate the wine's aroma. Not so good. No, not so good with sparkling wine, but the idea is to really get the most flavor and the most aroma from the wine by slurping or sucking air. Now, the 6th step I have already done. Today, I'm not spitting, I am swallowing, so I'm actually drinking the wine. But normally, especially if it's necessary to drive, you might spit the wine into a spit bucket or a spittoon. The last part is probably the most important, because to summarize, to actually speak about the wine, to describe it, is what will actually help you to remember the wine. So we have here on the 2nd page of our flip chart a summary based on the acronym BLITZ. What does BLITZ stand for? It stands for balance, length, intensity, complexity, and texture. When we talk about balance, we're talking about the harmony between things like alcohol, acidity. In the case of red wines, we would also want to see balance in the amount of tannins in the wine. When we talk about length, imagine that you have swallowed the wine, and then close your eyes and count how long you can still taste the wine in your mouth after you have swallowed. This is the length. And we talk about wines having a persistent length or a long finish if it has lingering flavors. Intensity. We can talk about the intensity of the color, the intensity of the aroma that we smell, and also the intensity of the flavor. And what we should never confuse is that wines with high intensity are not necessarily full-bodied wines. You can have a light-bodied wine like a Riesling or a Sauvignon Blanc with plenty of intensity. Complexity is all about the number of different types of flavors you can smell, and typically sparkling wines are very complex because the way that the bubbles are created is based on a secondary fermentation in the bottle by yeast that is added. And then, in the case of this particular wine, the wine has been laid on lees for 24 to 36 months. And this surly contact, this aging on lees, helps to produce this beautiful, bready, nutty, doughy, rich texture that you can get from good sparkling wine. And that's what we finish with, texture. It's one thing to look at a wine's color, it's another to appreciate its smell, but the texture in the mouth, this for me is one of the most exciting parts of wine. And really, really good sparkling wine like this has a beautiful, creamy texture, round and full. Okay, so we've started with sparkling wine. Maybe let's move on to a light-bodied wine such as the Riesling from La Hofer. Okay, so what were the 7 steps, or the 7 S's of wine tasting again? We can't see it because it's on the other side, but the first S is to see. It's to look at the wine. And here we have the 2012 La Hofer Riesling from the Znojmo region in Moravia. And we can see here, against a white background, that the wine is a mid-yellow color. And it's quite a bright yellow, very attractive. The second step, the second S, is to swell, that is to aerate the wine in the glass. The third S is to sniff. One of the things I love about Riesling is that it's such an aromatic variety. The aromas just jump out of the glass. So for me, this is somehow minty and with musk and also beautiful sort of grapefruit, lime and lemon citrus flavors. What's the fourth S again? It's to sip, and the fifth S is to slurp. So let's do that. So the sixth S is to swallow, and the 7th S is to summarize. So how can we describe the balance of this wine? Well, it is a high acid variety, of course, but it is beautifully balanced. I cannot feel any alcohol in this wine, so I'm not getting that warming sensation from alcohol, which is a good sign. What I am getting is excellent fruit intensity and beautiful lively acidity, which is the characteristic of this wine. What about length? Well, after swallowing the wine, I can taste it long after I have swallowed. So it has very persistent flavor or a long finish. Intensity? Well, the color intensity, I would say, is very full. One of the things you can notice is that the color goes right to the edge of the wine in the glass. What about the aroma intensity? Well, as I said, it's very aromatic, this wine. And the flavor intensity, even though it's a light-bodied wine, it means it's not so heavy in the mouth, but it has excellent flavor intensity. Complexity? Yeah, reasonably complex, because this wine has lots of different flavors. It has some citrus flavors like lime and lemon. It has some musk flavors, and it has some minty herbal flavors as well. As for texture, well, one of the things I love about Riesling is that it has this beautiful linear texture. Some people say that it's very lively, very vibrant, which means it's very exciting in the mouth. Because of all the natural acidity in Riesling, you get lots of mouth-watering sensations when you drink this wine. Okay, so we've tried sparkling wine, we've tried white wine. Let's move on to a Merlot from Moravia. So we've tried sparkling wine, we've tried white wine, and now we have a 2011 Merlot from Regina Coeli. And again, what are the 7 steps of wine tasting? Well, the first is to see. So we begin by looking at the color of this wine. And you can see that it's quite a deep ruby red color, which is exactly what you would expect from a young red wine. The second step is to swell, because we want to aerate the wine. We want to get as much aroma and flavor from it as possible. The third step is to sniff. And this has a beautiful bouquet. When we talk about bouquet, we're talking about collection of aromas, kind of like offering a bouquet of flowers to your girlfriend. You're not offering one flower, you're offering many different flowers. And this bouquet has things like plum, earthy hints and spice. It's a beautifully complex bouquet on this particular Merlot. What are steps 4 and 5? Of course, it's to sip and to slurp. So here we go, let's taste. Of course, and swallow in this case. And then the 7th step is to summarize. So the balance of this wine, you might notice that on the label it actually says barrique. Now, barrique in English is actually the name of a particular size of oak barrel. In fact, it's the 225 litre version of the oak barrel. So in English we usually talk about an oaked wine, not a barrique wine, but still, this was aged in barrique. So when we talk about balance here, for red wines, we're not only talking about the fruit intensity, the acid, we're also talking about alcohol, and of course tannins. Tannins from the skins of the grapes, and tannins from the oak. And here we see a beautifully harmonious balance in this wine between the obvious oak tannins, between the alcohol, which is warm and pleasant but not hot, and we have very lively acidity to make the wine taste very fresh. As for the length, well, with barrique wines you tend to get a little bit of extra length when you make them, and in this case you get a very long finish with this wine. As for the intensity, well, the intensity of the color is quite deep. The intensity of the aroma when you sniff it is very high, and the intensity of the taste of the flavor is very rich. It's a beautiful, beautiful wine. We mentioned before complexity, and in this particular case we see lots of different flavors on the palate. We see flavors from the fruit, so we have spice and earthiness and plum and stone fruits. And then we see dusty tannins and vanilla from the oak. So it's a very complex wine. And the texture is very full, very rich, almost a little bit creamy. Okay, so we've covered sparkling wine, we've covered white wines, now red wines. One of my favorite styles from the Czech Republic is ice wine. So let's try that now. In English, we say practice makes perfect. So my next question is a fairly obvious one. What are the 7 steps of wine tasting? Well, here we have a 2009 Pinot Gris ice wine, and this is from Znojmo, company in the a winery in the Znojmo wine region. And this is really one of the specialties of the Czech Republic. The first step, of course, is to see. So we hold the wine against a white background to get an accurate view of the color. We see this beautiful yellow gold here. The second step, of course, is to swell. So we're aerating the wine. We want to get as much aroma and flavor as possible. The third and fourth steps are to sniff, and then to sip. The fifth is to slurp. So let's go. We sniff the wine. Absolutely amazing lifted tropical fruits, pineapple, peach, melon. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful, and very, very lifted, very, very aromatic. And now to sip and to slurp. Oh yeah, it's so good. I'm definitely not going to spit this wine. And of course, the last step is to summarize. How can we describe this wine? Well, this is of course a very sweet wine. It's made from frozen grapes that were harvested in December. So it's very, very sweet. But one of the great things about ice wine is that it not only concentrates the sugar in the grapes, it also concentrates the acidity in the grapes as well. So it is incredibly well balanced. Some people say you almost get a slightly sweet and sour sensation because you get wonderful sweetness and also very lively acidity in this wine. It's very long. It has a beautiful long finish because the grapes are just so concentrated. It's very intense as well. Intense color, a deep yellow gold, absolutely intense aroma of tropical fruits and spice and dried fruits like prunes and dried apricots. Very, very complex because you get so many different aromas and flavors, and this beautiful texture as well, which we described before as this kind of sweet and sour. But because it has so much sugar, it's very rich, very creamy. Some people say very viscous, because when a wine is viscous, it resists movement. And the reason it resists movement is that it's so concentrated with sugar. And in your mouth, it is a very viscous texture. So I hope with just these 4 examples of a sparkling wine, a white wine, a red wine, and a sweet wine, we can demonstrate the 7 S's of wine tasting. First, to see. The second, to swell. The third, to sniff. Fourth, fifth, and sixth, to sip, slurp, and swallow. So I hope with these 4 wines, the sparkling wine, the Riesling, the Merlot, and now the Pinot Gris ice wine, that we have demonstrated to you the 7 S's of wine tasting. Thank you.